How are you, Danish?
All good, perfect. Given the circumstances, I
Are you
think
keeping well?
everybody.
How are you keeping?
It's been difficult, but I think everybody, each one of us, must just be thankful that if either we haven't caught COVID yet, or none of our family members have, I think we have so much to be grateful about. So that's a luxury in the present day time.
Yeah.
So considering that, I've
Yeah.
been blessed. Yes.
Lovely, lovely. Because, you know, it's such a pleasure to have you on board, Danish, for this conversation because, you know, you have inspired me. Obviously, like, you know, I've been doing so many posts and all the time I look at you, the way you have been working as a volunteer day and night. It has just been incredible. And I think everyone should know कि inspiration कहाँ से मिली है. तो मुझे तो inspiration Danish से मिली है, guys. He has really inspired me a lot. So tell me a little bit, Danish, like, how did you do all this? Like, I want everybody to know about it.
I think it's the same story for each and every volunteer across the country. When you see people in distress and you think that there is something perhaps you can do about it, whether it's something as simple as calling them up and calming them down, because a lot of people usually are in great distress, and when they actually catch COVID or somebody else in their family actually catches COVID, it is very difficult for them to first comprehend with that कि ऐसा कैसे हो गया, हमारे साथ कैसे हो गया, and most of them did not even know कि what next. So something which started with a concept as simple as that, to try and be there for people, to try and ensure that they don't panic in this time and they take the right steps. So that's how it started initially, from a first few SOS requests which came in. I think eventually, the journey which I started alone, eventually around 5 more volunteers joined in, and we started something called a QRT group. There's already an ERT group in Bangalore. We started a QRT group because we just needed more hands. There were so many SOS requests coming in. There's no way on earth that a single group could ever be able to handle those requests. And the government, as we all are aware, was completely caught unaware amongst all of this. So our health system was not prepared. There was no infrastructure in place. The best we could do is to ensure that people who require ICUs, we reduce the number of those people by telling them the right things in the beginning itself, so that these people do not step up from being in need of home isolation to requiring an ICU or worse, a ventilator. So that's how the entire process began.
Yeah. And you know, Danish, when you talked about like just simple things, कि मतलब लोगों को oximeter उनके पास नहीं था, which is like such a big thing. So how did you identify कि मतलब लोगों के पास like उनकी calls आ रही थी, like they were calling you, या was it there something, anything specific which actually told you that these people don't have oximeters?
See, first thing is, when we are online on these platforms, we tend to believe, or we tend to presume rather, that everybody has access to knowledge, information, and devices which are required to counter this pandemic, which is not the truth, actually. Even people living in a metropolitan city, in slums, or in pockets wherein they are what we call them underprivileged in a way, many privileged ones also had no idea about what to do next. So oximeter became something extremely vital in this entire scheme of things for two reasons. One, the availability became an issue. And when the availability was an issue, the prices went skyrocketing. So the black marketeers, what they did is they tried to, as they always do with any other situation, they tried to abuse this situation. And the prices went up for a oximeter, which would otherwise in a retail market should be costing no more than 500 to 700 rupees, to a minimum of 3,000 rupees per piece.
Wow.
And not many can afford that, because we have to understand this, that the pandemic is not new. It's been there for over a year now, more than 1 year now. Many people have lost their jobs. The businesses have collapsed. The margins have collapsed, if not the entire business. So access to capital, access to basic money to purchase these things became very limited for many people. So this was a very low-hanging fruit to see that this, if we are able to address this problem amongst people in distress, those who don't have the means or due to the lockdown who are unable to procure it. So we thought, let's do this. I had a few oximeters with me. That's how I started. I started sending them out to people. But eventually, when people realized it, I sent out a tweet about this. The requests were, there was no way anybody could humanly cater to those requests because the way those requests for oximeters really increased. So I was trying to do my best to ensure that everybody gets it. And you would be happy to know that each and every request that I have received, we have been able to give out oximeters to them despite the challenges, right? So that was the story of the oximeters, how we realized that if people are able to monitor their SpO2 levels and keep a track of them, the moment they hit 91, we would tell them and advise them that they should look for an oxygen bed, or they should look for to go beyond home isolation now. Because in most cases, what we realized is many people waited till their SpO2 levels went below 70 or below 80. And what happened because of that, each and every one of them fell in the category of requiring an ICU. And by the time those numbers grew, because many people took it too lightly initially, since those numbers grew, there were barely any basic general beds. Now the requests coming in were of ICUs, and the requests coming in were of ICU plus a ventilator. So where on earth do we fulfill those requests from, right? So I did some number crunching. See, if in an average for any Indian metropolitan city, we have 20,000 cases per day of COVID. Let's presume that only 5% of them require an ICU or hospitalization. Let's call it hospitalization. Let's not even go to ICU levels. That would easily be around 1,000 people per day. Every day, 1,000 new people requiring an ICU or a general bed. Do we have that capability to absorb in our existing health infrastructure? No, we don't. So how on earth would anybody be able to manage under these circumstances? So that was a challenge. So that's when oximeters came in handy. We said, okay, if we are able to help people get access to oximeters, so these people can get their oximeters, keep monitoring their SpO2 levels, and the moment they monitor their SpO2 levels, it would help us catching the cases early. And the moment they require basic oxygen facilities, we could shift them to basic oxygen beds and save these people from progressing or stepping up into a dangerous category of what we call it as ICU or ICUV. So that was a great help in terms of the oximeters thing. So the price challenge was first, then came the challenge of using this right and teaching people to use these right so that we reduce the dependencies of ICUs. And the third and most important part was, with the numbers growing, of numbers of requests growing, how do we manage deliveries? Because now there's a lockdown as well. So I tweeted out to Dunzo, those cities who have Dunzo, they know it's a delivery service. And they immediately responded. But then after that, they just went completely blind. Like I could not find them. There was no way to connect with them, right? So they took sort of, I was quite annoyed with them that you took the credit publicly. You told me that you're going to help me with this. Now you have gone completely missing. So 2 days later, they responded and said, we are sorry for this and we'll try to help out. Now they have tried to help out.
2 days is like, and Danish, but 2 days is like quite a lot for somebody's life. Jisko oximeter dena hai. 2 days also, 1 hour can make so much of a difference to that person.
But I think that's where our country is so beautiful, right? That the moment I hit a wall, there was somebody with a helping hand. So a Bangalore startup called Gordian, its founder just pinged me on Twitter and said, if you still require help with deliveries, I'm going to help you with deliveries. So there are so many God-sent angels. That's why I told you in the beginning itself, it's not just Danish Manzoor. It's so many Indians that came together as one. People forgot their religion, people forgot their caste and creed, nothing. It was just one thing, which was we are all Indians and all of us have to come together to try and save anyone that we can save at this point of time. So Prajwal from Gaudian just pinged me and I said, let's do it. And we were, in 5 minutes, we had a WhatsApp group of riders running, and we were just copy pasting addresses in the group, and they ensured deliveries. Of course, there were delays, but every delivery was ensured till date. So all the 3 challenges, from availability to education to delivery, we were able to mitigate these problems with regards to the oximeters. So far so good, but I would like to add here that the requirement for oximeters would not end with the 100 I have given so far. With the 1,000 I plan to procure and then give out with the help of far more donations and donors. One thing we did in donations is no money. We don't want cash. We don't want money. We don't want donations. If you help us in this, all you have to do is, if you have a spare oximeter at home, just sanitize it and send it to us, and we will make sure it stays in circulation. Because the problem we have, Swati, is that India is a country of 1.35 plus billion people, and it's growing every second. Even in the pandemic, there are childbirths happening, right? So population is definitely growing and not reducing. We will never have enough oximeters unless we build a culture of rotating these oximeters. We build a culture of trusting people that they will use it, and once they're done, they will give it to somebody else who needs these oximeters. Till the time that happens, it's going to be very problematic for us. So I started off on the part of building that culture in the country. We started from Bangalore. I hope other cities will also take it up. And the main issue with that is that many people told me we should charge a security deposit from people so that they return it, because in India, people don't give it back and they tend to hold the oximeters, and anything that comes for free, even if they don't need it, they'll say, come on, give it to us. So there will always be such cases, unfortunately. But should we, because of these few cases, few people, few bad eggs, should we make everybody else who's suffering, who needs an oximeter, should we make them suffer? Or should we let money be a barrier for people who can't afford an oximeter in the first place? So we are asking them for a certain amount to block that amount, so that they pay us a security deposit, and then we do the entire back and forth. So my idea was very simple, that let us trust people, trust our fellow Indians, and give out these oximeters and put the onus on their goodness that they will eventually keep these oximeters moving, and then they tell the other person to keep it moving. That was the only way of going about it.
So, similarly, Danish, what we did as well, because we've got a couple of oxygen concentrators, so we bought it in the first wave. So we just had one car dedicated, which would just go from one house to the other till the time उनको हॉस्पिटल में ऑक्सीजन बेड नहीं मिल रहा है, उनके ऑक्सीजन लेवल्स गिर रहे हैं, we would just give the oxygen concentrator and we would sanitize it and give that oxygen concentrator to somebody else next day. And little things also, Danish, kuch log like they found that the oximeter they were not able to check properly. Matlab 5 seconds mein they were like oxygen level kam ho gaya. That was also there. Some people's oximeter was not working. You given that example, and in my house, in my hometown, when my grandmother of 90, she's running low on oxygen, COVID positive, and I just asked my family to check if they had another oximeter. They did not, and हमें पता ही नहीं था if the oxygen level was low. So I think you touched at really right spot that oximeter plays like a really important role, because that's how you will actually see whether you would want to get into the hospital or not. So Danish, there was one more thing which was coming into my mind. We were talking about vaccination and how vaccine is so important for all of us. But just simple as my home staff, like my house help and all these people, इनके पास तो access नहीं है technology का. How are they going to even register? इनको English भी उतनी अच्छी से नहीं आती. There are so many people, they don't even know, they can't even read and write. So how are these people going to even, do you think that we should have volunteers who would help them in registering also on the apps?
See, I think this is a major technology barrier, which I have been actively not just tweeting about, but also trying to push the local governments and Government of India, requesting through friends that we really need to come together and then find a way to erase this technology barrier, because somehow in our country we have developed this notion that every Indian has access to technology. Yes, after Reliance Jio, people do have access to smartphones. They do have access to Facebook. But that by and large is limited to scrolling up and down on videos. They consume that content and that's where it ends. In most cases, they would just send messages to each other, voice notes, etc., etc. And many of them do video calls as well. So it is limited to a certain actions. But when it comes to specialized functions, wherein even people who are technologically enabled are barely able to register with the OTP, etc. issues being there. And after registering, it's like it's an insane rat race to try and book a vaccine appointment. So there are way too many barriers out there. The need of the hour at this juncture is beyond volunteering. It's risky. It's not going to be easy for people to step out and then go into the areas wherein people do not understand how this technology works. So I think this is beyond volunteers. This is where the local governance of our country, we have established panchayats, we have village level heads, we have deputy commissioners sitting on the top in every district. It's going to be their job to begin with, that they have to put policies in place so that they have these enrollments taken care of. Your members of Legislative Assembly, your MLAs have a very crucial job now. I think in this process, people will also, I hope people will also realize what kind of people have they elected. That were these people there for them? Did these people use the same political workers who showed up on your doorstep earlier to tell you, please vote for this candidate? And every political party has those workers at village level, at every mohalla level. Now it's time these political parties to put these people to action and then make them help the local population in their area, in their lane, in their village, have them onboarded onto COVID first, and then eventually organize a proper vaccination campaign for them. Though there is a major issue right now of vaccine availability, but once that is sorted, this part is going to be very important, that we have to institutionalize this, because volunteers alone can only do very limited in this sphere of work. That is one. The other part then is vaccine hesitancy. So you see, positive news about anything is very difficult to, it's very difficult for you to make it viral, make it go viral. Because it's positive and somehow people don't have too much of a tendency amid a pandemic to push that. Anything negative gets 20x more visibility and people tend to forward it. Look at this. After getting a COVID, I think Shahabuddin in the chat has just mentioned here that my friend got COVID after the first dose of vaccination. Yesterday, I had a similar call with the patient, wherein the patient tells me that I got my mother vaccinated, and 3 days later, she was COVID positive. I was shocked for a second, but then I said, no, let me just probe a little bit more. So when I probed a little bit more, it was very evident that the problem was not with the vaccine. His mom was COVID positive 5 days before the vaccine because his younger brother was tested positive and none of them had an idea about that. Right? So the younger brother gets COVID home, gets everyone infected, everybody gets scared and starts running to vaccination centers, gets vaccinated after having caught the virus. And they don't understand the virus was in the incubation period at that point of time. So the moment vaccine is done, virus starts showing its teeth, people think, oh, it was the vaccine which gave us COVID. And not realizing the virus was already there and the vaccine happened much later. So that's one. So coming back to your core question, which is volunteers, can they help? Yes, definitely they can help, but they have to put themselves at risk when they go and enroll these people. So that has to be done very cautiously and in a very structured way. It can't be you onboard somebody on the road now and then you have no idea. It has to be done from a village level. Take 10 houses, take 10 flats, and then go and check, do it in that way. And then there has to be, they have to update it somewhere centrally that people know, okay, this building is fully vaccinated. Right. So we will need to have those things in place in the days to come once we are able to tackle the vaccine availability part. And then the vaccine misinformation part, which also is something which we will have to really attack at this juncture and tell people no, vaccine does not give you COVID, and the side effects of vaccine are far lesser than if you catch COVID, what could happen. And I mean, you're more likely to get hit by a coconut falling on your head than getting blood clots due to a certain
True.
vaccine,
The
right?
funniest
So
thing,
yeah,
sorry, Danish, the funniest thing which I had read was somebody just messaged me saying that, ma'am, I got vaccinated for Covaxin. 2 दिन बाद मुझे COVID हो गया. Is it that all the virus is alive now? I'm like, how can that be possible? So it's all like people who are going to these centers, probably either they are COVID positive when they are going, or they are carrying the virus inside the house because they have not practiced social distancing and sanitizing and all of that. That is the reason why they are COVID positive. So it's not कि vaccination में vaccine में virus alive हो गया and all of that rumor.
and see, this virus, as is officially out there now, is technically airborne as well. So that 6 feet distance also does not really hold much water at this point of time.
Yeah.
We've seen what happened in Delhi. We've seen what happened in Mumbai. We've seen what happened in Bangalore as well. So you would really never, not even know, unless you start developing symptoms that you are carrying traces of the virus. There is. So probably the viral load you are carrying is very low, but after you get the vaccine, suddenly it flares up, right?
Yeah.
So people don't understand that vaccine does not give you COVID. Probably going to a vaccination center, coming in contact with somebody probably may, or you already had a dormant one, and then after you got vaccinated, its incubation period was over. Now the COVID is out there to get you.
So Danish, tell me something. Like, I understand there is something which I have been talking about is COVID fatigue now, you know, that how it's not COVID fatigue ka matlab hai, it's not only just the physical fatigue after the recovery or during the recovery, it's about your mental, emotional, social, because you know WHO says the definition for health is just not physical health, it's your mental, physical, emotional and social. So as a volunteer, like even when I have been trying to help people, a lot of times I see कि मैंने उनकी मदद करने की कोशिश करी. They were asking for plasma or oxygen and all of that, and then I get this news that that patient succumbed. So it's obviously it's very upsetting. But yet we also hear that you know that patient has come out of COVID. That is also very good to hear. So how do you actually cope up with the trauma of all of this as a volunteer? How can one do it?
See, I think it's difficult for anybody. In my case, I thought it would be slightly easier because I have experienced a substantial amount of trauma and I've gone through PTSD, come out of it. But it wasn't. It really wasn't. So despite having experienced substantial amount of trauma, when you actually see a patient that you're trying to help, somebody that you've spoken to just a while ago, and then they're really struggling with their breathing, and then you help them get an ICU. Somehow, miraculously, you find an ICU, you connect them, you find an ambulance for them, you send them, they reach the hospital, and you're relieved that, all right, this patient is done, taken care of. And 20 minutes later, sometimes a day later, you just get a call, the patient is no more. So it's like the emotions just literally drive you insane, because I remember the names of each and every patient that I've lost. I know their story. Each one of them eventually sort of becomes part of your family. There was a 41-year-old Nirmala Devi in Bangalore, one of the very recent cases. The entire family caught COVID. She had a 12-year-old boy at home. Husband is down with COVID, can barely move, is sort of bedridden. She gets serious. So it was a 12-year-old boy. I'm not going to name him because putting out a 12-year-old child's name is not exactly the right thing to do at this juncture, because the child also had to suffer a lot because of all of this. So the child started making distress calls. Somehow I got to know of the case. I took the case over. A lot of other friends came in and helped me with that case. With great difficulty, we managed to find an ICU bed for her. So Nirmala Devi, after being in an ambulance finally, has a cardiac episode and then goes into a minor cardiac arrest. Thankfully, the ambulance driver was skilled enough. He gets in, he tries to revive her, and we are able to revive her. So the boy starts calling me that my mom just had a heart attack. I said, I don't know what to do at this juncture. And the ambulance driver, I spoke to him. He said, it's okay, I've revived her. Please make sure the ICU is ready. By the time the patient reached the ICU, there was some minister who was trying to get the same bed for their own patient. I understand everybody needs a bed, but come on, the bed is blocked for somebody. The bed, there's a critical patient being transported to the hospital and you want that bed. So I got on top of it. I don't know how many people I had to fight with. I told them, just give me the minister's name. It doesn't matter. I will name and shame that minister and ensure that his patient also gets a bed somewhere, but not this bed. Not this bed. This is meant for Nirmala Devi. This is meant for the mother of this 12-year-old boy who's crying at this point of time. So long thing short, we just managed to get her a bed. She was put on an ICU ventilator. She struggled for a week, and I was happy. I announced it, told everybody she's doing well, etc. I was told by doctors she's recovering well. Then suddenly one night she just passes away. She just can't take it and she just passes away. And this 12-year-old boy is all broken. We even sent a social worker to help the boy out. So she was there with the boy. She made sure he was fed, etc. But it was insane. So I know Nirmala Devi. I've got a patient right now, Karan Kaul, who's 30-year-old, recently married. He's on a ventilator for past 15 days now, unconscious at this moment. We're all praying for him. So what I'm trying to say is each patient becomes your own family member. You know their name. So when you lose even one of them, Abhi, just 2 days ago, a 21-year-old girl in Bangalore, we managed to find a bed for her on an ICU. She was transported from one hospital to Apollo Hospital. An Indian cricketer, we were able to find him, who came in and offered help to sponsor the treatment as well. So look at how lucky we thought the girl is. Like, we were able to find a bed amidst a great bed crunch. She gets an Indian international cricketer to sponsor her treatment. The moment she reaches the hospital, she succumbs. So, right, it's like, it feels like a personal failure. So when you see good things, when you help people you end up trying to save their lives, the successes don't really, they don't matter because they're supposed to be alive anyways. So successes aren't exactly successes, but it is the loss that we face is what hits every volunteer really hard. And once that hits, it breaks you. I've seen people crying. I've seen my volunteers crying and howling, not just crying, howling. I've seen myself crying at times and that despair, because you work, you try and be awake for 22, 23 hours and you sleep for 1 hour. You turn your phone on after you wake up suddenly and you see, sorry, the patient has died. Sorry, the patient has died. And you're like, am I responsible for the death of these two patients? Had I been awake, would I have been able to help these patients? Would there have been a possibility that these patients would have found a bed if I was awake? So there is lack of sleep, there is depression comes in, there is extreme mental trauma which comes in. But amongst all of this, the most important thing I eventually realized after 32 days of barely sleeping was that unless there is self-care, your helping is not going to be sustainable. You will not be able to consistently help people. You'll not be able to consistently, as people call it, save lives. So you have to find a fine balance between ensuring you are okay. You have to find someone to talk to, either in your home or eventually a professional, because every Indian will require a mental health professional in the days to come. In fact, every country in the world will require that. But India at this juncture, especially after the extreme trauma that we have gone through, we would require help. And I hope there is education on that front, telling people what it means. It doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It just means it's absolutely normal to see a therapist. It's absolutely normal to get help. It doesn't mean you're a guy that you don't require help. So that macho things really have to be set aside, and people have to realize everybody, every human being regardless of their gender, requires help in the days to come.
And I think, Danish, is to do with the acceptance as well. You really need to accept that there is something wrong. You have to accept that, people have succumbed. You have to accept that you have got COVID. That acceptance is very important, because a lot of times people, they feel that हमको तो COVID है ही नहीं, nothing is wrong with me. What is COVID? It is just a bacteria. And then people, they start self-medicating as well. I think once we start accepting, it makes a lot of difference. If we don't accept, we are just not going to get anywhere.
I agree with you. And I think the mental health part perhaps will come a step later. But you, while just talking, raised a very important point, that there is a delusion amongst people that COVID doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there was I just shared a video, I just tweeted a video a week ago, wherein there were around 30 to 40 people in a 20 by 20 silk sari shop.
Yes, I saw that one.
Right? 20 to 30 in a 20 by 20 shop, like a very small shop, 20 people huddled inside trying to buy silk saris. What are you going to do with these silk saris? You can't take them to crematoriums. It's going to be a closed casket, as an Italian mayor once said when he was really pissed watching the Italian public take their dogs for a walk. I'm just taking my dog for a walk. I mean, nobody's going to see how you look like, what you're going to wear. Your family is not going to be able to see you in a closed casket. So what on earth are you going out for shopping? We have seen, even for Eid, we have seen people going out for confectionery and bakery shopping, people going out to buy. I mean, where is the education? Where is the sense? So that is why I explicitly focus on education and helping people relate to it, making them realize their delusions are nothing but delusions.
Yeah.
And they have to realize it is something very serious. So if you can afford, stay home. If you can afford, because if you can, you are one of the very privileged ones. There are millions who cannot afford, because their earning is hand to mouth. If they don't go out and work today, they will not be able to feed their family or themselves. So to think of them, if you can afford, please stay home, right? And ensure that you educate people within your family, because Indian families are very closely knit. So everybody wants to go and hug the other person. We are very physical that way. We want to shake hands. Friends get together and hug each other. I mean, for God's sake, don't do that, because for once, you don't know if the person you're talking to, your friend, is positive or not, or if the friend is a carrier at this point of time or not, because nobody would willingly give you COVID unless somebody is really demented, which is rare. Nobody will willingly say, okay, dushman hai mera, let's go and sort of, I want to make sure the entire family or this person gets COVID. Dushman ke saath bhi koi aisa nahi karega aaj ki date mein. But having said that, you really don't know who is the carrier in this point of time. So education in that respect is very, very important. People need to let go of these delusions, that stop going out, ensure distancing. Double masking is important. Mask below your nose is stupid. Right? You are a criminal. You're an extreme criminal. So I keep telling people, if you catch COVID because of your stupidity, you are somebody, you should be charged with attempt to suicide. You should be charged under law by that. If somebody else catches COVID because of you, because you did something stupid, which is going out without a mask, etc., you should be charged with murder, because you have actually killed somebody. And how would you live with yourself if you know that because of you somebody has died? Have you ever thought of that? This is how it needs to be communicated to people. So somebody needs the government, which has been absolutely defunct in this entire process. They are now trying to do some things, but they should have been doing that. Now that they have not done it, it is upon you, me, and all the other volunteers that we should do our bit. We should push the government and do our bit as well in educating people to let go of these delusions and take good care in these times. Help people out, people who can't afford to stay home. Help out these people in these times of distress, starting from your house helps, to people, to a security guard nearby, to a driver nearby who can't fend for themselves at this point of time. Open your pockets a little bit, for God's sake, right? Open your pockets a little bit, and don't go about spending money everywhere. You can't do that. Everybody has limited income, etc. Whoever do have it, but at least take one family take
Yeah,
care
and
of
I
one
tell
family
people,
better.
Danish, I tell people that if the mask is not comfortable to you, imagine once you are actually taking that mask when you are on a ventilator, how uncomfortable is that going to be? एक पतला सा कपड़ा पहनने में इनको इतनी दिक्कत हो रही है. Imagine when they have that mask 24 hours for maybe 7 days or 10 days, how are you going to bear that? So that is like really, it's about self.
It's not even just a mask. They're intubated, they're breathing through a tube, a machine is breathing for them, they're in
Yeah.
grave distress, right? So it's not just a mask that the ventilator is. The problem there is, Swati, and a practical one for every Indian, for your family, for my family. So some of the enlightened ones may perhaps be able to understand it. But let's be honest and ask ourselves, are we able to convince our own families? Are you able to convince your own mom? Am I able to convince my own parents that please, it's serious, right? That's where the problem is. So we need to try hard enough.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to really, really push hard for these things, set up hard boundaries there that no, you cannot step out. Children
Yeah.
will have to be parents.
Yeah.
Children will have to be parents. They will have to parent their parents and their family members at this juncture. Once children start, the youngsters who understand the severity and the veracity of these things, they will have to really play a major part. So I know it's difficult. For me also, it was very difficult. It took me 15 days to convince my family members, my parents, to make them realize the severity of it through emotional blackmail, through sending them videos of distress. It was sad. I felt sad I'm doing this to them. But I had to expose them to that reality for that they realize. And then as soon as they saw what's happening around them, what I've been sending them, the way I've been pleading to them, first requesting, then getting angry, etc., etc., and finally they saw it. I mean, I live 3,000 kilometers away from my parents. It was even more difficult for me. So when I was able to convince them, and then they also saw the reality, they haven't stepped out. They have been using a mask. Even within home, when somebody comes in, they keep the person outside and they don't let anybody come inside. And then they do proper COVID
Right.
protocol. They wash their hands and stuff. They send me videos of washing their hands till their
Lovely.
elbows and stuff, right? So that change has happened, but we will all have to really push hard for this.
It's like charity begins at home. So, you have to protect yourself, protect your family and people who are working for you. And then you can think about helping people outside as well. And, Danish, one thing I was thinking, every time when I felt low, mujhe laga ki, I'm not able to contribute to the society in like, more proactive way. I would just say one day, one life at a time. एक की मदद करो in 30 days and probably in 1 month you have helped 30 people, which is really big sitting from home. So just putting that checklist ki ek din mein, it's not about just going out there and helping. Even giving a phone call, even by just praying for that person, can make so much of a difference in that person's life. Because in COVID, patients like they are feeling low. A lot of people, they don't live with the family, so they are like isolated as well. They're living in different cities, and if they've got COVID, who is there to look for them? Like if a koi friend hai, just give them a call, just ask them how they are, and that will also make a lot of difference in their lives, I think.
So a lot of people, a lot of families that I've been interacting with are satellite families, as I call them now. So children are in bigger cities and parents are in smaller cities at this juncture.
Yeah.
So that became a really big problem in trying to even deploy help for these people, because these parents who were in distress due to COVID, they were not able to make up their minds. Should we go to the hospital? Should we not go to the hospital? Like I've sent ambulances to people. I said, uncle, you have to step out. The ambulance is outside. Please come out, sit in the ambulance. They'll take you. They said, I'm not sure, right?
Yes.
So what do you do at that point of time when there are 300 people, perhaps 3,000 people begging for an ambulance, and you arrange an ambulance for these people and they're unable to make their mind?
Danish, it happened. I had 11 people in my house for COVID, and they are in Ranchi. So I had to share this with everybody. 11 people from all age group, though Dadi Nani, who are 90, they have got COVID. then another person who is 80 has got COVID, 70 की age में किसी को COVID है. So like every 10 years there is somebody with COVID. And किसी तरह से bed arrange करवाया उनके लिए. And by the time you would just call कि ambulance है बाहर आप जाओ, they're not ready to go. And you managed to get the hold of those beds for them. You had fought with the ministers to get that bed, and then they decided they don't want to go. So literally we had to get like 4 volunteers to pick them up from bed and throw them in the ambulance, that you just have to go. There is no yes, no. Because people have so much of thing, because a lot of people, they think also in this age ki hum log, you know, in rural areas also people, they think hum hospital जाने का मतलब है हम मरने जा रहे हैं. They are like, हमें अगर मरना है तो हम अपने घर पे मरे, हम hospital क्यों जाए? So that is also there with people, and they really worry going to the hospital for that reason as well. You
See,
know,
that is the instance which you mentioned, Swati, is very interesting, because that is about your family. So you were able to push somebody to huddle them all up, round them up, and put them in an ambulance and send them to a hospital. But how do you do it for somebody else's family? That's the challenge. As a volunteer, you cannot do that, because they're like, what if we die? Who's going to take responsibility? And you're like, what do I do now? See, there are two sides to it, right? One was the government's failure that the volunteers were trying to fight against, trying to plug that gap of the government's failure. And one was the health infrastructure which was missing, the volunteers trying to plug that gap. How do you mitigate that? The other part of it was handling difficult patients and their families. When I say difficult patients and their families is, first they put out an SOS request. All of you get on top of it, try to find them beds, try to find them help. And by the time you move heaven and earth to find them help, they're like, nahi, hum subah tak sochenge. I'm talking about, I am awake at 2:30 a.m. I'm awake at 2:30 a.m. And in some cases, I come to know they've told me the wrong SpO2. The SpO2 was not 80, it was 90, right? And ultimately, what do you do in those cases? And then in some cases, I tell them, okay, now the ambulance is outside. Please move your patient. They're saying, it's 2:30 in the morning, in the night, as they call it. It's 2:30 in the night. So can we move the patient by 8 o'clock? I'm like, by 8 o'clock, your patient's SpO2 levels would have dropped from 80 to a 60. Right now, the patient needs a bed, perhaps even an HDU bed, and be okay with it. In the morning, your patient would require an ICU. Where on earth am I going to find you an ICU? Forget me. Where on earth are you going to find an ICU for your patient? So please save the patient's life and take the patient. Okay, we'll call you back. We'll think about it. Phone off.
It all, Danish, it comes down to acceptance, and it comes to denial as well, because a lot of people, they think that wo ghar pe ho jayega. Hospital जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. And you know, a lot of people have financial constraints as well. And I have seen, like, you know, when you had tweeted and when you were marked on all those threads with SOS, and I would just go and say कि चलो उनको number, so let me just give them a call. The number was either switched off or not reachable. Or there were a lot of people, they were so overwhelmed, all these family members or the caregivers, that they had got so many calls. And, you know, so they were just overwhelmed that they just turned their phone off. And how would you actually, you know, get connected? But I think we've had, you know, I think with every story, I'm sure, Danish, we have learned a lot. And, you know, it has really, you know, it's like something which really gets into deep thinking, that what the government has done, what we are doing now, what the government is doing, and what is the future in future pandemics. Like, you know, even in third wave, as they're expecting, कि third wave में भी क्या होगा? We don't know. We just have to prepare ourselves, and we have been left to fend for ourselves. So we just have to prepare ourselves कि third wave में अगर है, how are we going to protect it? Do you have any like good stories? Like, I know every story is a learning thing. So anything which is really positive and something which, like, you know, people can hear, so that they can be really happy कि हाँ बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग हैं, they have actually recovered also from COVID.
There definitely are. There are many, many, many stories. So I think out of the 360 tele-triaged which I did, we lost 20 people out of those 360, but remaining 340 are success stories. Remaining 340 are people who were sent to hospitals, and then they recovered, and then the families texted back to us and got back in touch and said, our patient is back home, they're safe. Like, and the age group ranges from 18-year-olds to 60 to 70-year-old. The age group even went down to children who were just born, like 3-day-old children as well at times, right? So there are lots of those success stories. But as I said, we don't call them success stories technically because they were not supposed to be in that position in the first place, right?
True.
Since
True.
they were in that place, so they're just lucky and they just got out, but the entire focus goes on those 20 who were lost, right?
Yeah.
And I think one important thing before you asked me this question about success stories, the point you highlighted was a very vital one. I would like to touch upon this one, which is that many people turn their phones off because they get too many calls. So that's where I think the topic of this session also was that how to volunteer right.
Yeah.
The problem in volunteering right is that everybody wants to help. हर किसी को मदद करनी, हर कोई चाहता है कि ठीक है हम लोग भी आके हेल्प करें. पर जब आप हेल्प करने जाएं तो आपको पता होना चाहिए कि सही से कैसे हेल्प की जाए. हेल्प करने का मतलब ये नहीं कि आपके पास अच्छा इंटेंशन है, आपकी नीयत साफ है और आप मदद करना चाहते हो. सिर्फ वो हेल्प करना वहां तक सीमित नहीं होता है. आई एम टॉकिंग इन हिंदी बिकॉज तरुण हियर आस्क्ड अस टू आप हिंदी में बात करिए, सो आई विल कीप ऑल्टरनेटिंग बिटवीन हिंदी एंड इंग्लिश. तो आपको अगर सही से हेल्प करना है, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि आप पहले ये देखें कि आप वॉलंटियरिंग के कौन से पार्ट में आते हैं. वॉलंटियरिंग का एक पार्ट वो है जहां पे जिसे हम टेली-ट्रियाज कहते हैं. टेली-ट्रियाज मतलब जब आप किसी पेशेंट को, आपके पास एक एसओएस आता है, आप उस पेशेंट को कॉल करते हैं, आप उस पेशेंट की फैमिली से जब आप बात करते हैं, तो फैमिली से बात करके आप पहले उनसे पूरा डिटेल ले लीजिए. पेशेंट का नाम क्या है, पेशेंट का SpO2 लेवल कितना है, क्या वो ऑक्सीजन पे है या नहीं है, उनको और कोई बीमारी है या नहीं है, कोई और मेडिकेशंस ले रहे हैं क्या, और किस हॉस्पिटल गए हैं अभी तक, क्या ट्रीटमेंट अभी तक हुआ है. ये सब चीजें आप नोट करके एक फॉर्मेट में जमा कर लें. और उनको अभी किस प्रकार के बेड की जरूरत है, चाहे उनको एक HDU चाहिए, नॉर्मल बेड चाहिए, उनको एक बेड विद ऑक्सीजन चाहिए, ICU चाहिए या ICU वेंटिलेटर चाहिए. ठीक है. तो ये जब आप उनसे जानकारी पूरी ले लें, उसके बाद में आप किसी ऐसे वॉलंटियर को हैंड ओवर कर सकते हैं जो बेड बुकिंग करना जानते हैं, जिनके एक्सपर्टीज इसमें है कि वो कॉल करें गवर्नमेंट को, वो कॉल करें म्युनिसिपैलिटी को, वो हॉस्पिटल्स को कॉल करें, और इनको कॉल करने के बाद में वो लोग कनेक्ट करें पेशेंट को, और पेशेंट के जो अटेंडेंट हैं उनको कनेक्ट करें हॉस्पिटल्स के साथ में. बाद में उनको एम्बुलेंस दिलाए. कोई वॉलंटियर खाली एम्बुलेंस पे काम कर सकता है, कोई वॉलंटियर खाली सिर्फ मेडिकेशंस पे काम कर सकता है, कोई वॉलंटियर खाली ऑक्सीमीटर डिलीवर करने में, दवाइयां घरों पे डिलीवर करने में काम कर सकता है, कोई वॉलंटियर पेशेंट हॉस्पिटल आ गया उसके बाद उनके लोगों से, उनकी फैमिली से टच में रह सकता है और अपडेट्स ले सकता है, और कोई ऐसा वॉलंटियर जो फाइनली अपडेट कर ले पहले वॉलंटियर को, भैया तेरा पेशेंट जो दिया था वो घर पहुंच गया या द पेशेंट इज नो मोर. तो कम से कम वो लीड क्लोज हो जाए. तो अगर आपको ऐसा लगता है कि आप पूरा काम खुद कर लेंगे, बहुत कम ऐसे लोग हैं जो पूरा एंड टू एंड कर देंगे. जैसे मेरे वॉलंटियर्स थे, हम लोग थे, वी ट्राइड दिस दैट वी डिलीवर एंड टू एंड, from doing the tele-triage of a patient to ensuring the patient is discharged or we get the final update of the patient. This is very important. So we were able to close the leads end to end. We focused only on that, right? And if we are not able to do that, so please don't bother calling up the patients. आपकी नीयत तो साफ है कि आप पेशेंट्स को कॉल करके पूछना चाहते हैं क्या हुआ, लेकिन आप उसके अलावा कुछ कर नहीं पाएंगे तो मत करिए. क्यों? क्योंकि अगर 5 और वॉलंटियर्स ऐसे हैं जिनकी वजह से इनकी जान बच सकती है, आपका फोन करने की वजह से ये होगा कि ये लोग उस वॉलंटियर का फोन नहीं उठाएंगे, या किसी और ने, मैंने, हो सकता है कि उनके लिए बेड अरेंज कर लिया हो, अब आप लोग खाली उनको फोन कर रहे हैं. Just because you're calling them repeatedly, they feel harassed, they turn their phone off. I will be rendered helpless, that I will not be able to send them the ambulance, I will not be able to find them a bed, I will not be able to help save their lives. तो वॉलंटियरिंग करने का मतलब ये नहीं कि आपको करना है, कई बार ना करना भी वॉलंटियर करना है. It's not always that you have to volunteer, do something. Many a times doing nothing is also doing a lot. So do nothing, just educate your people, just educate people on how to use the oximeter, educate people on how to just try to help them in any way. But don't get into कॉलिंग बिजनेस और गेट इनटू समथिंग जो आपकी एक्सपर्टीज अभी तक नहीं है, उसमें मत जाइए, क्योंकि आप हेल्प करने के बजाय ज्यादा हार्म कर लेंगे. इंस्टेड ऑफ हेल्पिंग यू विल कॉज मोर हार्म इन सच केसेस. सो दिस वाज दैट. Coming back to your question of good stories, as I said, out of 360 triages done, 340 were the success stories. 340 were जहाँ पे कोई pregnant woman, 7 months pregnant, 8 months pregnant, 9 months pregnant woman, सब लोगों ने उम्मीद छोड़ दी कि कुछ नहीं हो सकता है, SpO2 लेवल 60 पे आ गया है, क्या करें. सबने कहा, सब वॉलंटियर्स ने कहा कुछ नहीं कर सकते, ICU है ही नहीं, 400 का वेटिंग है, people are waiting for 500, 600 wait list was there for ICUs in Bangalore. कुछ नहीं कर सकते, just pray. So prayers also helped. Miracles have also happened. When I say miracles, people who don't believe in miracles, I think इस pandemic ने उनको भी चमत्कारों में यकीन करना सिखा दिया. The miracles, चमत्कार हुए कि जहाँ 400 का वेटिंग है, एक पेशेंट, प्रेग्नेंट पेशेंट जिसका 9th month प्रेगनेंसी थी, लेबर में थी पेशेंट, उनको सडनली बेड मिल गया. पता नहीं कहाँ से कोई आया, उसने कहा एक पेशेंट पास्ड अवे अनफॉर्चुनेटली, और उसका बेड खाली, और ये पेशेंट एकदम हॉस्पिटल के बाहर थी. इससे पहले कोई दूसरा पेशेंट पहुंच पाता, ये पेशेंट उसी हॉस्पिटल के बाहर एम्बुलेंस में थी, एंड दिस पेशेंट वाज एबल टू बी शिफ्टेड इनसाइड ऑन दैट ICU. वो पेशेंट की भी जान बची. देयर वाज अ हेल्दी डिलीवरी. बेबी के लिए भी NICU वहीं पे मिला, बिकॉज इट वाज अ विमेन्स हॉस्पिटल. तो बेबी भी बच गया, मदर भी बची. So both of us, we were able to save both the mother and this. So there are hundreds and thousands of such success stories and good stories as well.
Yeah.
But the
always
point
look
is,
at the brighter side, you know, मतलब आना जाना किसका कोविड में क्या लिखा है वो जानना बहुत मुश्किल है, but always look at the brighter side and please guys be positive because and करते रहिए आप. Don't give up. आप एंड मोमेंट तक आप लोगों की मदद करते रहिए, आप जिस तरह से भी मदद कर सकते हैं. लाइक इवन इफ यू प्रे, दैट इज आल्सो लाइक अ हेल्प. इफ यू डोंट बॉदर द पेशेंट, दैट इज आल्सो अ हेल्प. So I think, you know, it's really, really good, Danish. Like, do you have like any message? Like, I know you've got like a lot of things to talk about, but any one message you would want everyone to know
see, I
before I
think
end?
before we close this chat up today, few very important things that our country would require lots of volunteers. We will require all of us to come together as one nation now. So at this juncture, I hope and pray that we forget the recent horrid past that we have gone through. You've seen a platform like Twitter, which was absolutely negative and so vile and so hurtful, and so there was too much abuse on that platform. Even that platform turned positive. उस प्लेटफॉर्म पे ही हमने इतने लोगों की हेल्प की, उस प्लेटफॉर्म से ही हमने कितने लोगों की जाने बचाने में हम लोग हेल्प कर पाए. तो there is hope for love, there is hope for care. So at this time, I think let this be a defining moment in our country कि अब हर कोई जो वो एक हेट्रेड है, क्योंकि किसी ने देखा नहीं कि ये पेशेंट का धर्म क्या था जिसकी हम हेल्प कर रहे हैं, किसी ने उसकी एज नहीं देखी, किसी ने उसका जेंडर नहीं देखा, सिर्फ ये देखा कि पेशेंट है, कोई डिस्ट्रेस में है. वो है देश हमारा, दैट इज आवर इंडिया. तो बहुत जरूरी है कि हम इस एक सेंटिमेंट को साथ लेके चलें, कि एकता के साथ चलें, कि पॉलिटिशियंस जो भी हमारे देश को डिवाइड करने की कोशिश करते हैं इलेक्शंस को जीतने के लिए, अब हम समझ जाएं फाइनली कि ये देश एक है, हम सबका खून लाल है, हम सब वी आर ऑल वन, और कोई धर्म, कोई जाति, कोई कुछ ना देखे जब हेल्प करने की बारी आती है. और कोविड के बाद भी इसी प्यार को, इसी एकता को मेंटेन करके हम लोग अपने देश को आगे बढ़ाएं. ये पहली बात. सेकेंड थिंग इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट दैट वी विल नीड वॉलंटियर्स टू टीच पीपल इन देयर नेबरहुड्स कि ऑक्सीमीटर का इस्तेमाल कैसे किया जाता है. Many people don't know how to do that. तो इससे ये होगा कि हम जल्द ही पकड़ लेंगे कि जब ऑक्सीजन लेवल्स पेशेंट की कम होती हैं, हम जल्दी पकड़ लेंगे. We'll be able to help these patients out. इससे पहले कि ये पेशेंट्स ऑक्सीजन बेड की रिक्वायरमेंट से ICU के रिक्वायरमेंट में पहुंच जाए, हम उनकी हेल्प जल्दी कर पाएंगे और वो खुद अपनी हेल्प जल्दी कर पाएंगे. हम सबको ऑक्सीमीटर्स अगर हमारे पास में है, जो ही हमारा रिक्वायरमेंट खत्म हो गया, वी शुड पास इट ऑन। कोई दूसरा बंदा, दूसरी फैमिली देखें जो अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते हैं, अपना सैनिटाइज करके अच्छे से अपने ऑक्सीमीटर को किसी और को दे दें और उनसे भी रिक्वेस्ट करें कि अपना ऑक्सीमीटर आगे बढ़ाते रहें। ठीक है, सो दिस इज द सेकेंड वन। एंड द थर्ड एंड द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट वन इज प्लीज स्टे होम इफ यू कैन अफोर्ड टू। अगर आप घर रह सकते हैं तो आप बहुत किस्मत वाले हैं, तो घर पे रहिए। और जितने आपके फैमिली में लोग हैं उन सबको वैक्सीन के बारे में बताइए। जो ही अवेलेबिलिटी जब भी होती है, द मोमेंट द वैक्सीन बिकम अवेलेबल, एट फर्स्ट इंस्टेंस प्लीज गेट एवरी फैमिली मेंबर वैक्सीनेटेड। अभी वैसे भी कोई ऐसा वैक्सीन नहीं है जो 100% सही है, लेकिन होता यह है कि वैक्सीन के बाद में अगर आपको फिर कोविड होता है, द सिवेरिटी बिकम्स मच 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 लेसर। हो सकता है कि वैक्सीन लेने के बाद कोविड हो तो आप घर पे ही ठीक हो जाएं, आपको आईसीयू की या हॉस्पिटल की जरूरत ना पड़े। ये डिफरेंस जिंदगी और मौत का डिफरेंस है, इट्स अ डिफरेंस ऑफ लाइफ एंड डेथ। सो एजुकेशन बहुत जरूरी है। नेगेटिव बातें ना वैक्सीन के बारे में फैलाइए और ना ही हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन के बारे में फैलाइए। अननेसेसरी दवाइयां गूगल को देख के मत प्रिस्क्राइब कीजिए। हैव फेथ इन योर मेडिकल डॉक्टर्स एंड whatever your doctor prescribes, only take that, because अगर आप गूगल को देख के 10 सेकंड में एक टॉप डॉक्टर से कंपेयर करते हैं तो फिर कोई जरूरत नहीं है किसी डॉक्टर को। देयर इज नो नीड फॉर डॉक्टर्स टू स्टडी फॉर 15 years 20 years एंड कीप ऑन अपडेटिंग देमसेल्व्स। फिर तो सभी डॉक्टर है ना, फिर आप बाबा गूगल की ही सुन लीजिए तो आप भी डॉक्टर बन गए, तो फिर डॉक्टर के पास जाने की जरूरत नहीं है। बट ये बात याद रखिए, कोई भी दकियानुसी बात, कोई भी अनप्रूवन मेडिकल फैक्ट, कोई भी गूगल सर्च करके अपने पेशेंट्स की जान खतरे में मत डालिए और अपनी जान भी खतरे में मत डालिए। ओनली गो बाय गवर्नमेंट मैंडेटेड एंड डॉक्टर गिवन एडवाइस, खाली उसको फॉलो कीजिए। देखिए, प्लाज्मा हमारे पास में एक प्रॉब्लम था, हर कोई पागल हो गया था कि प्लाज्मा चाहिए प्लाज्मा चाहिए, पर प्लाज्मा की जरूरत थी ही नहीं। प्लाज्मा का कोई देयर वाज नो मेडिकल प्रूफ फॉर प्लाज्मा टू बी एक्चुअली इफेक्टिव। पीपल हैव डाइड इवन आफ्टर गेटिंग प्लाज्मा। सेम रेमडेसिविर के लिए कितनी पागलपन कितना हुआ, कितनी मतलब हर जगह आप देखिए, एवरीबडी वाज ट्राइंग टू रन हेल्टर स्केल्टर बेगिंग फॉर रेमडेसिविर, पीपल मेड फेक रेमडेसिविर एज वेल। तो क्या था वो, पब्लिक प्रेशर से ड्राइव होके डॉक्टर्स ने प्रिस्क्राइब करना शुरू किया। सो इन सब चीजों पे को अंत पे लाना बहुत जरूरी है। तो वापस मिलजुल के रहिए, देश को एक बना के रहिए। स्टे वन, स्टे एज वन नेशन, स्टे विद लव, बी देयर फॉर ईच अदर, teach people how to use oximeters and teach people how to what to do when in trouble, right? So जानिए कि आपकी सिटी में किस नंबर पे कॉल करना है कि अगर आपको हॉस्पिटलाइज होना है। And also, most importantly, educate people about vaccine misinformation and take good care of yourselves and stay safe. Follow the COVID SOPs, and that's where I wrap it.
And one more thing I would want to add: do not listen to WhatsApp University.
Yes.
Please don't listen to WhatsApp University. Not only for COVID, diet related भी इतनी सारी चीजें आती है, like people they write about diet stuff on WhatsApp कि something has worked for them. अगर इतना ही कुछ WhatsApp में होता, why was the need for us to study for so long? You're right. So I'm hoping you guys will help. जो भी जिन लोगों ने भी आज ये सेशन सुना है, I'm sure it has helped us a lot, Danish. So thank you so much for taking out time. And you have always been an inspiration. So I always go on to Twitter and look at what you are doing. And I always, every time I feel low, I always look at what you're doing and it motivates me again. So thank you so much, Danish.
Thank you.
So take care, everyone. Take care, and I'll talk to everyone soon. And if you've got any question, अगर आपको कोई भी questions है, आप please आप Danish को Instagram पे भी use कर, उनका handle दिया हुआ है, आप उनको फॉलो कर सकते हैं, या आप उनके ट्विटर अकाउंट में भी आप उनको मैसेज कर सकते हैं, एंड यू कैन जस्ट से दैट यू हैव अटेंडेड टुडेज सेशन एंड सेंड इन्फॉर्मेशन ओनली और सेंड रिक्वेस्ट ओनली फॉर हेल्प इफ देयर इज एनी नीड फॉर इट. जस्ट डोंट send irrelevant messages to Danish. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Danish. Please take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.